My mother's voice was weak, but her words hit like a sledgehammer. The bakery was never meant for you, Noelle, it goes to your brother. I stood at the foot of her hospital bed, flour still dusted on my sleeves from the 4 a.m. shift I'd left to rush to her side, and felt 15 years of my life crumble like overbaked shortbread. But what my mother didn't know, what nobody in my family knew except the lawyer who would walk through that door in exactly 47 minutes, was that my grandmother had seen this betrayal coming 2 decades ago and had taken steps to ensure that no one, not even her own daughter, could steal what I had rightfully earned. The bakery was already mine. It had been mine since I was 14 years old. Sweet Magnolia Bakery had been in my family for 3 generations. My great-grandmother, Opal Fontaine, started it in 1952 with a wood-fired oven and a dream. She sold biscuits and pound cakes from a converted garage in Charleston, South Carolina, building a reputation one satisfied customer at a time. When she died, she passed it to my grandmother, Rose, who expanded the operation into a proper storefront and added wedding cakes to the menu. And when my grandmother got older, she started preparing me to take over. Not my mother. Me. My mother, Vivian, had never wanted the bakery. She hated the early mornings, the physical labor, the constant smell of butter and sugar that clung to everything. She married my father, a real estate developer with money and ambition, and moved into a fancy house in the suburbs, determined to leave her working-class origins behind. But I was different. From the time I was old enough to hold a wooden spoon, I was at my grandmother's side. I learned to make pie crust before I learned to ride a bike. I could temper chocolate by the time I was 10. By 14, I was working the front counter every weekend, and by 16, I was developing my own recipes: lavender shortbread, bourbon pecan tarts, a chocolate cake so rich and dense that customers drove hours to buy it. My grandmother saw something in me that she didn't see in my mother or my brother. She saw herself. "You have the gift, baby girl," Grandma Rose told me on my 14th birthday. "The bakery speaks to you the way it spoke to me and my mama. That's rare. That's precious. And I'm not going to let anyone take it away from you." I didn't understand what she meant at the time. I was 14, more concerned with boys and homework than legal documents and family politics. But my grandmother was already planning, already protecting, already laying the groundwork for a battle she knew was coming. She put the bakery in a trust. Not for my mother. Not for my brother. For me. The trust was ironclad, created by one of the best estate attorneys in South Carolina. It specified that Sweet Magnolia Bakery would belong to me on my 25th birthday, that I would have full ownership and control, and that no one, not my parents, not my brother, not any court in the land, could change that. My grandmother told no one about the trust except the lawyer who created it. And then, 6 months after my 14th birthday, she died. The years after Grandma Rose's death were complicated. My mother inherited what everyone believed was the bakery, the building, the business, the recipes, everything. She had no interest in running it herself, but she wasn't about to sell something that had been in the family for 3 generations. So she hired a manager, reduced her own involvement to occasional inspections and financial reviews, and treated the bakery like an investment property rather than a legacy. I kept working there. I worked there through high school, through my brief attempt at college, through my 20s when I should have been building a separate career. The managers came and went, but I was the constant, the one who knew every recipe by heart, who could fix the ancient mixers when they broke down, who remembered the names of customers' children and grandchildren. By the time I was 25, I was running the bakery in everything but name. The manager my mother had hired was useless, a business school graduate who knew spreadsheets but couldn't tell the difference between cake flour and all-purpose. I covered for his mistakes, trained his staff, and kept Sweet Magnolia running through sheer force of will. But my mother never acknowledged any of it. In her eyes, I was still the hired help. The daughter who had wasted her potential on flour and sugar instead of getting a real career like my brother, Patrick, who had gone to law school and joined a prestigious firm in Atlanta. Patrick, who visited twice a year, Christmas and Mother's Day, and spent both visits complaining about how provincial Charleston was compared to the big city. Patrick, who hadn't set foot in the bakery since Grandma Rose's funeral. Patrick, who my mother adored with a ferocity that left no room for me. I turned 25. I waited for something to happen, for a letter from a lawyer, for a revelation, for the trust my grandmother had mentioned to materialize out of thin air. Nothing came. I convinced myself I had misremembered, that my grandmother's promise had been a fantasy, that I had built my life around a foundation that didn't exist. I kept working at the bakery because it was all I knew, all I loved, all I had. I was 34 years old when my mother's diagnosis came. Stage 3 pancreatic cancer. Aggressive. Inoperable. And suddenly, after 34 years of treating me like an afterthought, my mother wanted to talk about the future. "We need to discuss the bakery," she said during one of my visits to the hospital. She was propped up on pillows, thinner than I'd ever seen her, but her eyes were still sharp. Still calculating. What about it? I've decided to leave it to Patrick. I felt the words like a physical blow. Patrick? Patrick who hasn't worked there a day in his life? Patrick who lives in Atlanta and has zero interest in baking. Patrick understands business. He can hire people to do the actual work. My mother's voice was matter-of-fact, as if she were discussing the weather rather than destroying my life. You can stay on as manager, if you want. I'm sure Patrick will be generous about salary. I've been running that bakery for 15 years, Mom. 15 years of 6-day weeks and 4 a.m. starts. I've kept it alive through 2 recessions and a pandemic. And I appreciate your help. She cut me off with a wave of her hand. But let's be realistic, Noelle. You're a baker. Patrick is a professional. He has the education and the business acumen to take Sweet Magnolia to the next level. The next level? What does that even mean? Expansion. Franchising. He has ideas. She smiled, a thin, satisfied smile that made my stomach turn. The bakery was never meant for you, sweetheart. It goes to your brother. I stared at her, this woman who had given birth to me, who had raised me, who had never once told me she was proud of anything I'd accomplished. And I realized, with a clarity that felt like breaking glass, that she never would. I left the hospital without another word. I drove home in a fog of grief and rage, barely seeing the road, barely aware of the tears streaming down my face. 15 years. 15 years of my life, poured into a business that my mother was going to hand to my brother like a birthday present. It wasn't fair. It wasn't right. But there was nothing I could do. Or so I thought. The call came 3 days later. Ms. Noelle Fontaine? The voice on the phone was professional, formal. My name is Theodore Marshall. I'm an estate attorney here in Charleston. I'm calling about a matter related to your grandmother, Rose Fontaine. I almost hung up, assuming it was a scam. My grandmother died 20 years ago. I'm aware. That's why I'm calling. A pause. Miss Fontaine, your grandmother created a trust before her death. A trust that names you as the sole beneficiary of Sweet Magnolia Bakery. I've been holding the documentation per her instructions, waiting for the appropriate time to reveal its contents. I couldn't speak. Couldn't breathe. Miss Fontaine? Are you there? I'm here, I managed. Are you telling me? I'm telling you that Sweet Magnolia Bakery has legally belonged to you since your 25th birthday. Your mother has been operating it under the assumption that she inherited full ownership, but that assumption is incorrect. The trust your grandmother created supersedes any claims your mother might have made in her own will. Why didn't you tell me this 9 years ago? Why wait until now? Theodore Marshall sighed. Your grandmother specified that the trust should be revealed when, and I quote, Noelle needs it most. She anticipated that there might come a time when her daughter would try to take the bakery from you. She wanted me to wait for that moment. And this is that moment. I received a call from your mother's lawyer yesterday, asking me to prepare documentation for a transfer of ownership to your brother, Patrick. That call triggered the revelation clause in the trust. He paused. I think we should meet, Miss Fontaine. There's quite a bit to discuss. We met the next morning at Theodore Marshall's office, a stately building downtown that smelled of leather and old money. Theodore was in his 70s, silver-haired and sharp-eyed, with the kind of quiet authority that came from decades of practice. He had been my grandmother's lawyer for 30 years, he explained. He had handled her estate, her taxes, her business affairs. And he had been the keeper of her secret for 2 decades. Your grandmother was a remarkable woman, he said, spreading documents across his desk. She knew her daughter well. She knew that Vivian had no love for the bakery and would eventually try to sell it or give it to someone who didn't deserve it. So she took precautions. I looked at the trust documents, at my grandmother's signature, at the legal language that declared me the sole owner of Sweet Magnolia Bakery. This is real, I whispered. This is actually real. It's real, it's legal, and it's ironclad. Theodore smiled grimly. Your mother has no claim to the bakery. She never did. She's been operating it as if she owned it, but technically, she's been managing property that belongs to you. What about the will she's making now? The one leaving everything to Patrick. She can leave him whatever she wants, but she can't give him something that isn't hers. The bakery isn't part of her estate. It never was. I sat back in my chair, overwhelmed by the magnitude of what I was hearing. My grandmother had protected me. From beyond the grave, she had seen this betrayal coming and had wrapped me in legal armor that my mother couldn't penetrate. There's one more thing, Theodore said. Your grandmother left a letter for you. She instructed me to give it to you when the trust was revealed. He handed me an envelope, yellowed with age, with my name written on the front in my grandmother's elegant script. I opened it with trembling hands. My darling Noelle, if you're reading this, then my worst fears have come true. Your mother has tried to take the bakery from you, and you've discovered the truth I've kept hidden all these years. I'm sorry I couldn't tell you sooner. I wanted to, so many times. But I knew that if Vivian found out about the trust, she would find a way to contest it, to delay it, to make your life miserable while lawyers fought over your inheritance. I needed the trust to be a surprise, a weapon you could deploy when you needed it most. The bakery is yours, baby girl. It was always meant to be yours. Not because of blood or tradition, but because you earned it. I watched you fall in love with baking the way I fell in love with it, the way my mother fell in love with it. You have the gift. You have the passion. You have the heart that makes Sweet Magnolia more than just a business. Your mother will never understand that. Patrick will never understand that. But you do. And that's why the bakery belongs to you. I know this revelation will cause pain. I know your mother will be angry, that your brother will feel cheated, that there will be conflict and hard feelings. But I need you to remember something: the people who love you will support you. The people who don't were never on your side to begin with. You are worthy of this legacy, Noelle. You always were. Don't let anyone tell you differently. All my love, forever. Grandma Rose. I read the letter 3 times, tears streaming down my face, before I could speak. What do we do now? I asked Theodore. Now, he said, we tell your family the truth. The confrontation happened in my mother's hospital room, 3 days later. My mother had insisted on having Patrick present for what she called the reading of her final wishes. Patrick had flown in from Atlanta, oozing self-importance, already talking about his plans to modernize the bakery and maximize its profit potential. They expected me to sit quietly while my inheritance was handed to someone who didn't deserve it. They didn't expect Theodore Marshall to walk through the door. What is this? My mother's voice was sharp with suspicion. Who is this man? This is Theodore Marshall, I said calmly. He was Grandma Rose's lawyer. He has some information that's relevant to your plans for the bakery. Patrick snorted. Grandma's been dead for 20 years. What could her lawyer possibly have to say that matters now? Theodore stepped forward, placing a folder on my mother's bedside table. Mrs. Fontaine, 20 years ago, your mother created a trust that placed Sweet Magnolia Bakery under the sole ownership of your daughter, Noelle. The trust was designed to activate on Noelle's 25th birthday, at which point she became the legal owner of the bakery and all its assets. Silence. My mother stared at the folder like it was a snake about to strike. Patrick's face went red, then white, then red again. That's impossible, my mother said finally. My mother left everything to me. I have the will. The will addressed property that was not covered by the trust, Theodore said smoothly. The bakery was specifically excluded. Your mother wanted to ensure that it passed directly to Noelle, bypassing you entirely. Why would she do that? My mother's voice rose to something close to a shriek. I'm her daughter. I'm the one who. You're the one who never wanted the bakery, I said quietly. You made that clear your whole life. Grandma knew you would try to sell it or give it to someone who didn't love it the way she did. So she protected it. She protected me. This is ridiculous. Patrick was on his feet now, pacing the small room. This trust is probably fraudulent. We'll contest it. We'll. The trust has been reviewed by 3 independent attorneys, Theodore interrupted. It's valid, it's legal, and it's uncontestable. Mrs. Fontaine has no claim to the bakery. Neither do you, Mr. Fontaine. Patrick's face contorted with rage. He grabbed his coffee cup from the bedside table and hurled it at the wall, where it exploded in a spray of brown liquid and ceramic shards. This is bullshit. He screamed. I'm a lawyer. I'll find a way to break this. You'll do nothing. My voice was steady, calm, cold in a way I'd never managed before. The bakery is mine. It's been mine for 9 years. And there's nothing you or Mom or anyone else can do to change that. My mother was crying now, not gentle tears, but harsh, angry sobs. My own mother, she gasped. My own mother went behind my back. Your own mother protected her granddaughter from you, I said. Because she knew exactly who you are. She knew you would always choose Patrick over me. She knew you would try to take the one thing I loved and give it to someone who didn't care about it. I cared about you. No, Mom. You didn't. I picked up my grandmother's letter, which I had brought with me, and placed it on the bed beside her. Grandma wrote me this. She knew, 20 years ago, exactly how this would play out. She knew you would dismiss me, overlook me, treat me like I was nothing. And she made sure that when you finally showed your true colors, I would have protection. My mother reached for the letter, but I pulled it back. That's mine. Just like the bakery is mine. I looked at her, really looked at her, and felt something shift inside me. Not anger, not grief. Just release. I spent 34 years trying to earn your love, Mom. Trying to be good enough, work hard enough, prove myself enough. But it was never going to happen, was it? Patrick was always going to be your favorite. I was always going to be the disappointment. That's not. It is. I cut her off. And I'm done. I'm done trying to make you see my worth. Grandma saw it. The customers at the bakery see it. I see it. Your opinion doesn't matter anymore. I turned to leave, then paused at the door. I hope you recover, Mom. I hope you have many more years. But I won't be spending them trying to win a contest I was never going to win. I looked at Patrick, still red-faced and trembling with rage. And you, don't bother coming to Charleston for the bakery. It's not yours. It never was. It never will be. I walked out without looking back. The aftermath was messy, as family conflicts always are. Patrick did try to contest the trust, spending $47,000 on lawyers who eventually told him what Theodore had said from the beginning: the document was unbreakable. He stopped speaking to me entirely, which I considered a gift rather than a loss. My mother recovered enough to leave the hospital, but our relationship never recovered. She sent occasional guilt-laden messages through relatives, complaining about my cruelty and my betrayal. I didn't respond. I had spent too many years absorbing her disappointment to take on any more. But the bakery thrived. With full ownership officially in my hands, I finally had the authority to make the changes I'd been dreaming about for years. I fired the useless manager and took over operations myself. I hired 3 new bakers, all young, all passionate, all eager to learn the recipes that had been passed down through 4 generations. I renovated the storefront, installed new equipment, and expanded our menu to include gluten-free options and vegan pastries without compromising the classics that our customers loved. Within a year, Sweet Magnolia was featured in Southern Living magazine. Within 2 years, we were named one of the best bakeries in South Carolina. Within 3 years, we had a second location and a waiting list for wedding cakes that stretched 8 months into the future. I didn't franchise. I didn't maximize profit potential. I did exactly what my grandmother would have done. I ran the bakery with love, with care, with an obsessive attention to quality that couldn't be replicated by corporate expansion. And every morning, at 4 a.m., I walked through the door of that kitchen and thanked my grandmother for believing in me. 5 years after the hospital confrontation, I received a letter from my mother. Not a guilt trip this time. Not a complaint. Just a letter. Noelle, I've been doing a lot of thinking. The doctors say I probably have a year left, maybe less. And I don't want to die with this between us. I was wrong. About you, about the bakery, about everything. I spent so many years trying to escape where I came from that I couldn't see the value in what we had. Your grandmother built something beautiful, and you've made it even more beautiful. I should have been proud of you. I should have told you that every day. I understand if you can't forgive me. I'm not sure I deserve forgiveness. But I wanted you to know that I see it now. I see what you've accomplished. And I'm sorry I was too blind to see it before. Your mother, Vivian. I stared at that letter for a long time. I thought about all the years of hurt, all the dismissals, all the moments when she chose Patrick over me. I thought about the hospital room, about her trying to give away my inheritance with her dying breath. And then I thought about my grandmother, and what she would want me to do. I visited my mother the next week. She was in hospice care by then, thin and fragile, barely recognizable as the formidable woman who had dominated my childhood. She cried when she saw me. I cried too. We didn't resolve everything. You can't undo 34 years of damage and a few weeks of hospital visits. But we talked, really talked, for the first time in our lives. She told me about her own childhood, about the pressure she felt to escape the bakery, about her complicated relationship with her mother. I told her about the years of feeling invisible, about the pain of watching her pour all her love into Patrick while I scraped for crumbs. She died 3 months later. Patrick didn't come to the funeral. He was too busy with a case in Atlanta, he said. Too important to say goodbye to his mother. I was there. I held her hand at the end. And when she took her last breath, I whispered, "I forgive you." I don't know if she heard me. I don't know if it mattered. But I needed to say it. For her, and for myself. Sweet Magnolia Bakery is 20 years old now. I'm 54, still running the business, still waking up at 4 a.m., still covered in flour more often than not. I've trained a new generation of bakers, including my own daughter, Lily, who has the same gift that my grandmother saw in me. The trust that my grandmother created has been updated, rewritten, passed down. When I die, the bakery will go to Lily, protected by the same ironclad legal structure that protected me. And if Lily has children who love baking the way we do, it will pass to them. Some people build legacies with money or power. We build ours with butter and sugar and love. There's a portrait of my grandmother hanging in the bakery, right behind the register where every customer can see it. Underneath, there's a small plaque with the words she used to say to me when I was a little girl, learning to roll pie crust on her ancient wooden table. The secret to good baking is love, baby girl. You put love in, you get love back. That's the only recipe that really matters. I think about those words every day. I think about the love she put into the bakery, into me, into the trust that saved my life. And I think about the love I put into every cake, every cookie, every loaf of bread that leaves this kitchen. My mother tried to take this place from me. My brother thought he was entitled to it. But my grandmother knew the truth. The bakery was always meant for me. And I was always meant for it. Patrick showed up once, about a decade after our mother died. He walked into the bakery on a busy Saturday morning, looking older and grayer than I remembered. He stood by the door, watching the customers, the bakers, the controlled chaos of a shop running at full capacity. I saw him from across the room and felt nothing. No anger, no resentment, no lingering pain. Just a vague curiosity about what he wanted. He approached the counter where I was boxing up an order of lemon bars. "Looks like you've done well," he said stiffly. "I have. I was wrong, you know. About the trust. About the bakery. About..." He trailed off. "About you." I finished tying the ribbon on the box and looked up at my brother, really looked at him for the first time in years. "Yes," I said simply. "You were." He waited, as if expecting me to say more. To welcome him back, perhaps. To offer forgiveness, reconciliation, a share in the success he had tried to steal. I handed the lemon bars to my waiting customer and turned to the next person in line. "Can I help you?" I asked, my voice bright and professional. Patrick stood there a moment longer, then turned and walked out. I never saw him again. Some people would call that cold. Unforgiving. Harsh. But my grandmother taught me something important, something she put in that letter she wrote 20 years before I would read it: the people who love you will support you. The people who don't were never on your side to begin with. Patrick was never on my side. My mother wasn't either, not for most of my life. They saw me as a tool, an obstacle, a disappointment, never as a person worthy of love and respect. My grandmother saw me. The customers who come back week after week see me. My daughter sees me. That's enough. That's more than enough. I'm closing up the bakery as I write this, the same closing routine I've done 10,000 times. Wiping down counters. Storing ingredients. Making sure the ovens are off and the doors are locked. Tomorrow, I'll be back at 4 a.m., ready to start again. Because that's what we do, the women of Sweet Magnolia. We show up. We work. We pour love into everything we create. And we protect each other, across generations, across death, across time. My grandmother protected me when she couldn't be there to do it herself. I'll do the same for my daughter. And she'll do the same for hers. That's the legacy. Not the building. Not the recipes. Not the money. The love. Always the love.